The 2024-25 season marked an unexpected turning point in the recent history of Manchester City. After years of dominance in the Premier League and an impressive collection of trophies under Pep Guardiola's management, the club experienced something rare, a campaign without any silverware. With Liverpool reclaiming the top spot in the league and Crystal Palace delivering a harsh blow in the FA Cup final, the mood among fans and the squad was one of frustration and urgency. It was against this backdrop of pressure and uncertainty that the first signs of a drastic overhaul began to emerge. Pep Guardiola, visibly dissatisfied with the group's performance, started laying the groundwork for what promises to be one of the busiest transfer windows in the club's modern era. According to sources close to City's board, the budget for signings in the upcoming summer window has been set between $180 million and $200 million. It is a substantial investment, but a necessary one considering the need for targeted replacements and the possible departure of key names such as Kevin De Bruyne, who may leave the Etihad Stadium before the end of his contract. With the potential exit of the Belgian, the club also benefits from a significant reduction in the wage bill, which reinforces the capacity for spending without breaching financial fair play regulations. This robust sum, however, will not come solely from the club's coffers or from the Champions League prize money, which is still in contention. Part of the board's plan is to raise funds through the sale of players deemed surplus to requirements or who have interest from other clubs. James McAtee is the most frequently mentioned name so far. The young midfielder, who had important performances in the early stages of the Cups, could be sold to free up funds. Bayer Leverkusen and Nottingham Forest have already shown interest, and a sale at this moment could represent a good financial return. Despite this, the decision regarding McAtee is not unanimous among supporters. Many regard the player as a gem of the club's academy system, a symbol of the future. Others, more pragmatic, recognize that the current moment demands sacrifices for City to return to the top. And the truth is that McAtee, even with his talent, saw his relevance diminish towards the end of the season, when he was even omitted from receiving medals after the FA Cup final. On the other side of the table, the new sporting director, Hugo Viana, has already begun moving to strengthen the squad. Two names are priorities in the midfield sector, as well as two fullbacks, one for each flank. The most delicate mission is to replace Kyle Walker and De Bruyne, both pillars of the team in recent triumphs. One of the midfield targets is Tojiro Johnny Rangers, a promising Japanese footballer with technical style and sharp vision. But the name gaining the most momentum behind the scenes at the club is Eberechi Eze. The Crystal Palace midfielder was one of the season's standouts and, ironically, shone brightly in his team's victory over City in the FA Cup final. His goal in the decider reflected a mature, assured, and decisive performance. After that display, it became difficult to ignore his ability. Eze is valued at around $59 million, the amount of the release clause set by Palace. City is considering triggering this clause and completing the transfer in the coming weeks. The signing would be a double blow. It would strengthen their own squad and weaken a direct rival that has proven capable of competing at a high level. In the words of manager Oliver Glasner, Eze is absurdly good, and his movement, ball control, and decision-making ability have made him a target for several European giants, but City appear to be in the lead. Another name that has entered the radar of the Sky Blues is Morgan Gibbs-White. The Nottingham Forest midfielder faces a different situation. While Eze plays for a club on the rise, Gibbs-White may be forced to leave Forest due to financial issues. The club was penalized with a points deduction for failing to meet sustainability rules. And, with a near-certain absence from European competitions, the sales of their key players become practically inevitable. Gibbs-White, who stood out even amid Forest's difficulties, would be an impactful signing, especially if City lose De Bruyne. And the interest in him is not just a rumor. Experts close to the board believe a bid of up to $100 million could be made, depending on negotiations. Is that a lot of money? Certainly. But City believe he has the right profile to manage the transition between midfield generations, and the player seems tempted by the idea of playing under Guardiola's command. This intense behind-the-scenes activity at the club is accompanied by a sense of an end of an era for some players. The defeat in the FA Cup not only ended a disappointing season, but also exposed the divide between the first team and the developing players. James McAtee and Rico Lewis, for example, were important figures in the early stages of the competition, but were not even called up to receive medals after the final, an exclusion that symbolizes the club's re-evaluation of its squad. Lewis, despite being less subject to exit rumors, also saw his confidence shaken, and Jack Grealish, one of the club's most expensive players in history, did not even leave the bench in the final. Guardiola's decision to field the young Claudio Echeverri instead was seen by many as a clear message. The future may not include Grealish. Even having played in 5 cup matches and contributing with goals and assists, his place in the team seems increasingly diminished. Ultimately, what is shaping up is a hectic transfer window, in which Manchester City will seek to renew their squad with both prudence and aggression. The goal is clear: to return to the top, restore prestige, and above all, avoid another trophyless season. Pep Guardiola still holds the trust of the fans and the board, but even idols need to reinvent themselves to remain at their peak, and that is precisely what he intends to do. While the board works behind the scenes to overhaul the squad, Pep Guardiola, despite not winning any trophies in the last campaign, remains the central figure of the rebuilding process. Still respected and regarded as essential to the club's project, he knows that the mistakes and omissions of last season cannot be repeated. The pressure will come stronger than ever, not only from the fans and the media, but also internally, as the club does not intend to lose national dominance again or waste opportunities in knockout competitions. Guardiola has always stood out for his adaptability, and this is precisely what he is counting on to rebuild the team. The loss of names like Kevin De Bruyne, if confirmed, will require profound tactical adjustments. The Belgian was not just a player of rare talent, he was the creative engine of the team, responsible for linking midfield to attack with pinpoint passes, exceptional game vision, and personality in decisive moments. For this reason, the profile sought by the management is not only technical, but also mental. Players like Ebereki Eze and Morgan Gibbs-White offer more than skill. They bring a hunger for victory, dynamism, and energy, qualities Guardiola particularly values in rebuilding processes. Eze, for instance, demonstrated maturity in his performance against City themselves. It was not just a beautiful goal. It was the way he read the game, controlled the rhythm, and intercepted opposing plays that made him such an attractive target. Gibbs-White, meanwhile, has something that sets him apart: resilience. At Forest, playing under constant pressure, he stood out for his versatility and competitive spirit. And if we add to that the delicate financial situation of his current club, the possibility of a transfer becomes even more concrete. With Forest facing real threats of new sanctions for financial breaches, selling their key assets may be the only viable way out. This market movement, however, will come at an emotional cost for City fans. Accustomed to stability, several beloved players may be playing their final season at the club, whether due to performance, age, or contractual context. Jack Grealish is the most emblematic case. Signed with great expectation, he never managed to establish himself as an indispensable piece. His exclusion from the FA Cup final was symbolic. An experienced player, with caps for the England national team, being overlooked for a newly arrived youngster. The message was clear: the time for patience is over. Guardiola, pressured by results and aware that he may be living his final years at the club, does not want to waste another season betting on promises that do not materialize. Therefore, the next transfer window is expected to be marked not only by major signings, but also by impactful departures. The plan also includes the arrival of 2 full-backs. Kyle Walker, despite still delivering good performances, no longer possesses the physical explosiveness that established him as one of the best in the world in his position. Guardiola wants a younger player, capable of constant defensive recovery and offensive support. The same applies to the left side, where the constant injuries to players like Cancelo and Guardiola's inconsistency at fullback have left a difficult gap to fill. That is why the board sees this summer as decisive, a unique opportunity to adjust the squad and prepare City for the upcoming cycles. And with Hugo Viana leading negotiations, there is optimism. The former Braga director has a reputation for being agile, strategic, and very well connected in the European market. His immediate interest in Easy is an example of how the club intends to act more decisively in signings, avoiding long dramas like those that characterized previous windows. Meanwhile, the fans watch every move with attention and a degree of apprehension. The elimination from the FA Cup was painful not only because of the result, but due to the feeling of helplessness. Seeing the team with more possession, more passes, and no cutting edge in attack was frustrating. Even more painful was watching players like McAtee and Lewis, key figures in the campaign, being left out of the final ceremony, a scene that summed up well what many felt throughout the season, that something essential had been lost along the way. And the absence of trophies was not just an isolated failure. It exposed deficiencies in the squad, tactical misalignment, and even emotional weariness. There was no sparkle that marked the golden years under Pep. Intensity dropped, confidence fluctuated, and in crucial matches, the instinct that separates champions from good teams was missing. Rebuilding, therefore, is not just technical. It is emotional. It is cultural. City seeks to recover not only dominance in tournaments, but the spirit that took them to the top, the hunger to win, group cohesion, and the collective mentality that made the club an almost unbeatable machine. This explains why Guardiola not only wants reinforcements, but demands players with personality, leadership, and the ability to decide on big stages. In the coming weeks, all eyes will be on market movements. The fate of names such as McAtee, Grealish, Lewis, and even De Bruyne should be decided before preseason. At the same time, the board will work to finalize the arrivals of Easy, Gibbs-White, and other targets still kept under wraps. The idea is to start training with at least 70% of the new squad already defined, so Pep has time to integrate the new talents into his philosophy. For now, what is known is that the Manchester City of 2025-26 will be very different from the one that failed last season. With a generous budget, new leadership in the sporting department, and an experienced coaching staff, the club is moving to write a new chapter. And if plans are well executed, City may not only return to the top, but do so with even greater strength. In the Manchester City dressing room, the effects of a trophyless season still reverberate. It is not just a matter of absent trophies on the shelf, but subtle ruptures in an environment that, for many years, was defined by a culture of absolute excellence. When a group accustomed to winning starts to lose, the impact goes beyond the pitch. What was once routine becomes doubt. What was confidence turns into pressure. And at the Etihad, this transition was felt by everyone. Players who were once considered untouchable began to be observed with more critical eyes. Some, like Rodri and Bernardo Silva, maintained a high level, but others could not sustain the same intensity. And this began to create fissures, silent but noticeable, among the athletes. The competition for space increased. The rotation promoted by Guardiola, once celebrated as strategic, began to generate frustration. Young prospects felt neglected. Veterans found themselves overtaken. James McAtee is the clearest example of this. A club academy graduate, he had important moments in the cup campaigns, but saw his season marked by unexplained absences. His absence in the final, despite not being injured, was the final blow. For many inside the club, this was the sign that McAtee is on his way out. His contract is ending soon, and despite the affection he has for City, the player wants minutes on the pitch. He wants to feel valued, something that clearly did not happen this year. Rico Lewis faces a similar dilemma. Although praised by Guardiola for his versatility and tactical intelligence, he lost playing time precisely when the season demanded fresh blood. In the FA Cup final, he was left out of the squad. a difficult choice to justify given his performance in the earlier rounds. For a homegrown youngster who grew up with the City badge on his chest, these decisions hurt, and they can leave scars. But the truth is that Guardiola is at a point in his career where decisions must be made without room for sentimentality. He knows time is short. If he wants to end his cycle at Manchester City with another golden era, he will have to take risks, and that includes cutting familiar names, making space for new leadership, and rebuilding the emotional structure of the team. The coach knows that last season showed more than just a physical decline. It revealed a loss of competitive identity. For this reason, the arrival of new players will not be just to fill technical gaps. Pep wants to rebuild the winning spirit, and he believes this starts in the dressing room. Players like Easy and Gibbs-White are seen as catalysts for this transformation, not just because of their qualities, but because of their freshness, attitude, and willingness to prove themselves at the highest level. These are athletes who come hungry, and that is precisely what the squad is lacking today. And it's not just an emotional issue. The physical aspect is also taken into account. City's squad has aged. Several players are over 30, and the intensity Guardiola demands is not easy to maintain as the seasons go by. Even the most disciplined feel the wear and tear, and this was evident in the final minutes of crucial matches when City could no longer impose their usual rhythm. Regeneration, therefore, is not optional. It is an urgent necessity. What is projected for the next season is a younger, more aggressive, and perhaps less predictable City. Players like Claudio Echeverri, Vita Ree, and Oscar Bob are expected to have more opportunities. They are talents still being polished, but with characteristics Guardiola appreciates: courage with the ball, vision of the game, and the ability to break lines. It is still early to know if any of them will assume a leading role, but the coach wants to accelerate the process. There is no time for long maturation periods. At the same time, the board is analyzing the opportunities the market offers. Interest in Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen remains, but his increased value after a spectacular season complicates negotiations. The club does not want to get involved in bidding wars and believes it can find solutions just as effective for more reasonable sums. The arrival of Hugo Viana serves this purpose, applying market intelligence to make smart signings without inflating the budget. With a ceiling of $200 million, Manchester City will have to be surgical. This means, in practice, that every signing must bring an immediate impact. The plan is to close 4 key signings, 2 midfielders and 2 fullbacks, before the start of pre-season. Guardiola wants to work with the complete squad from the outset to avoid the adaptation problems that hampered the last campaign. And it's not just the players who are under scrutiny. The coaching staff will also undergo adjustments. Rumors indicate that some current team members are likely to be replaced by professionals with a more analytical profile, focused on data use and performance monitoring. The club understands that physical and tactical preparation needs to be even more personalized and is willing to invest accordingly. Technology will be a crucial ally in the reconstruction process. This structural renewal will also impact the behind-the-scenes environment at the training center. The atmosphere, which has always been highly demanding, now needs to find a balance between pressure and support. The management wants to restore the joy of training, something that gradually disappeared during last season. At times, the mood became heavy. Injuries, defeats, the pressure for results, all this created a more tense atmosphere than usual. And Guardiola, who has always valued positive energy in training, wants to change that. The upcoming season will be marked by a different narrative. For the first time in years, Manchester City will enter without the label of absolute favorites. And perhaps that is what the club needs: to become the hunter again, not the hunted, to rediscover urgency, the obsession with victory, the desire to prove something. Amid the pain of defeat, there is the seed of reinvention, and City knows well how to plant it when they decide to start anew. In the stands, the supporters know something is changing. It is not a crisis, but a new cycle approaching. The excitement for possible reinforcements mixes with the nostalgia for idols who may leave. But what remains is the love for the club, a feeling that, even in difficult times, never stops beating. And it is that which pushes the team towards the next chapter. If you have made it this far, it is because you truly live Manchester City intensely, just like us. There have been many details, behind-the-scenes stories, expectations, and possible changes that could completely transform our club's next season. Now, more than ever, every step matters. Every decision from the board, every move in the market can define the course of a new cycle. So, if you want to keep following everything closely, from transfer room gossip to the decisive matches next season, don't forget to leave a like. It shows us that you value this content and motivates us to keep delivering it with the depth that City fans deserve. And of course, if you're not subscribed yet, take this opportunity to subscribe to the channel. That way, you make sure you won't miss any news about Manchester City, from the first behind-the-scenes rumor to the official announcement of a major signing. Until next time, supporter, the sky is blue, and so is the future.